Hi, everybody. Thanks for another great week. Every week I'm continually just really happy and really pleased with how engaged everybody is and how everybody's really working together to push all of our learning. And this past week was no exception. I just wanted to reach out about one thing that I did notice during week 5, just to help clarify that if it would be helpful. And then I'll talk a little bit about week 6. So we had one of our discussions this week was when I gave you the different kind of very basic examples and then had you choose which one of the ways of learning you thought would be best, the best way to approach learning that. So something that came up during that discussion quite often was, oh yeah, I could see how you could use this way of learning, but you could also use this one. Maybe you could also use this one. So I didn't want to leave you all a little confused about like, well, can we just use anything? Why are we even having this conversation? So what you need to do is this needs to come directly back to the objective. The examples that I gave you in class were not written as objectives, and they were purposely kind of broad because I wanted you to have these conversations. The reality is when you have a well-written, very specific objective, then that way of learning is very clear. So for example, one of the topics that I gave you was learning the anatomy of the heart. So that was all I said. Teach somebody the anatomy of the heart. If you have a well-written objective, it's going to say something like, the learners are going to be able to point out all of the major pieces of the heart and label them on a diagram. Okay. If that's your objective, I think it's pretty clear that your way of learning is going to be cognitive, right? That pretty much people are going to, say, here's this information, I learned the information, I can write down the information. On the other hand, if your objective is learn the anatomy of the heart so you can look at a malfunctioning heart and diagnose a medical problem, you're going to have to know those anatomy, those pieces, but the reality of what you need to do to meet that objective and the knowledge that you're going to use for the anatomy of the heart is more under kind of that problem solving, right? Kind of that mental models thing. So I didn't make a mistake and purposely give you very vague sort of learning objectives, but I wanted you to have the conversations that you did so you could see that the specificity of an objective is really what then drives how that objective is taught in terms of the way of learning that you're using. So I think you all kind of got to that, but if not, I wanted to make sure I clarified that. So this coming week 6, can you believe this? Week 6. We're going to continue our work on the ways of learning, and we will look at specifically three of the 7 ways of learning, and kind of dig into some real life examples of when you've seen these in action, and if they worked and if they didn't work, and those sorts of things. Yes, you do have 3 chapters to read of the text this week. Please, please, please do not feel that this is not cognitive learning. You do not need to memorize everything in those 3 chapters. I want you to understand the big idea behind the 3 ways of learning that we're exploring this week. But those finer details, you don't need to know those by heart. You don't need to memorize those and have them right here. I kind of think of the Davis and Arendt book as a resource. So you know the basics and you will know the basic idea behind the 7 ways of learning. And if you need to go and use one later on to prepare a lesson, you go back to the book and you understand those details and those finer pieces. So you should be able to get the big idea reading those 3 chapters without spending an inordinate amount of time doing that. So that'll be this week as we'll be digging into those. As always, I'm excited to see where the conversation goes and where our work goes, and always reach out to me if you want to dig into anything a little bit deeper individually.